Everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Chris, and Purrs. My name's Leslie, and you know what? Today is the first day of American Indian Heritage Month, and I thought I would just kind of whip up this segment with recommendations, podcasts, and books. And either the book is authored by the podcaster or they just happen to be in the book. I thought that'd be a great way to make just suggestions for someone to listen or read this month. And at the end, I am going to just discuss an article with other podcast suggestions that I thought would be kind of like a great way to just kick off the month. All right. To start off, we have Rebecca Nagle, who authored By the Fire We Carry. I have not read the book yet, but Margaret Pernard, author extraordinaire, who also has a YouTube channel, is either reviewed this book or is going to review it pretty soon. I think they're waiting on it from the library still. I've listened to the podcast This Land. Rebecca is the host. It's 2 seasons, and it's pretty darn heavy, but definitely worth a listen. As I'm saying, I'm waiting for my computer to load up what I was already had ready for us. This Land podcast is put on by Crooked Media. It's an award-winning documentary podcast. And Rebecca reports on how the far right is using Native children to attack American Indian tribes and advance a conservative agenda. Now, the book By the Fire We Carry I'll just kind of read the synopsis. Before 2020, American Indian reservations made up roughly 55 million acres of the land in the United States. Nearly 200 million acres are reserved for national forests. And the emergence of this great nation, our government set aside more land for trees than for indigenous people. In the 1830s, Muskogee people were rounded up by the U.S. military at gunpoint and forced into exile halfway across the continent. At the time, they were promised this new land would be theirs for as long as the grass grew and the water ran. But that promise was not kept. When Oklahoma was created on top of Muskogee land, the new state claimed their reservation no longer existed. Over a century later, a Muskogee citizen was sentenced to death for murdering another Muskogee citizen on tribal land. His defense attorney argues the murder occurred on the reservation of his tribe, and therefore Oklahoma didn't have the jurisdiction to execute him. Oklahoma asserted that the reservation no longer existed. In the summer of 2020, the Supreme Court settled the dispute. Its ruling that would ultimately underpin multiple reservations covering almost half the land in Oklahoma, including Nagle's own Cherokee Nation. Now, this is something also that one of the seasons of This Land covers. It's really riveting, but it's also just really incredibly heavy, but again, just worth reading. Going on to a little bit of a lighter subject. We have Brian Bahi and Jenna Schmelding and their podcast, Sage-Based Wisdom. I love both of these comedians. I'm a huge fan of just like stand-up comedy. Now, Brian Bahi was profiled and we had a little real estate problem. The author, Kliph, Nesteroff, is not Indigenous, but what he did is he just profiled different Indigenous people in the Indigenous community, and also at the beginning he does profile a couple of people that are no longer alive. What I like about the author's approach is that he very much does his best to he stays out of the narrative, and he's really just profiling someone. It's not about him, it's about the person in front of him. And so I really enjoyed that, and it gave me a chance to know about this comedian that I didn't know about before. And he performs quite a bit in New York. Brian Bahi is an Indigenous enrolled member of the Tohono Onham Nation and a member of the Hopi and Navajo Nation. He's a comedian, writer, and actor based in New York City. He's taped a special on Comedy Central Digital, and his writing has appeared in McSweeney's. He has been featured in NPR, Vulture, and the Los Angeles Times. And Schmelding, who's not in the book, but they have a podcast together, is, I mean, most recently on a comedy that I absolutely love that ran for 2 seasons that got canceled, which I'm still, all these years later, I'm still upset about. It was called Rutherford Falls. Jenna Schmelding is I don't want to say it wrongly, and Sikangu Lakota actor, writer, and comedian known for her work on Rutherford Falls, formerly a public school teacher in New York City. Jenna Schmelding moved to LA to pursue her career, her television career. And so, yeah, I really like this new podcast. It's just like a silly way from them to chat. And I've just like really, really enjoyed it. And last but not least, I just read this book and did a short book review of All I See Is Violence by Angie, Elita, Newell. I noticed in an interview they recently had, they mentioned that they're going to have a podcast coming out, I think in January. I went ahead and snooped around, and I think that, oh my gosh, let's see if it comes up. I think I was trying to find the name of it and I couldn't. I tried looking in an article. So just keep your eyes peeled because they are going to have a podcast out. And I know as soon as it's out, I'll mention it again and I'll post about it. If not in some way, I'll put it like in a short or something, just so that y'all know. Or actually, I could probably put in a comment. So all I see is violence. I'll read the synopsis. A woman warrior, a ruthless general, and a single mother, 3 stories definitely braid into the legacy of stolen nation. The U.S. government stole the Black Hills from the Sioux as it stole land from every tribe across North America. Forcibly relocated, American Indians were enslaved under the strict land and resource regulation. Indigenous writer Angelita Newell brings a poignant retelling of the catastrophic true story of the 1876 Battle of Little Bighorn and the social upheaval that occurred on the Pine Ridge Reservation. In 1972, during the height of the American Indian movement, Cheyenne warrior Little Wolf fights to maintain her people's land and heritage as General Custer leads a devastating campaign against American Indians, killing anyone who refuses to relocate to the Red Cloud Agency in South Dakota. A century later, on the same reservation, Little Wolf's relation, Nancy Swift Fox, raises 4 boys with the help of her father-in-law while facing the economic and social ramifications of this violent legacy. All I See Is Violence weaves loss, love, and hard truths into a story that needs to be told, a journey through violence to bear witness to all that was taken, to honor what all of our ancestors lived through, and to heal by acknowledging the shadows in order to fight the light. And that was a really devastating book for me. I am glad that I read it, but it was rough. That's what I'll say. So those are just some suggestions. If you've read the book, you should check out the podcast and vice versa. I did find this article that I wanted to share. Let's see how I come up over here. Okay, cool. Here's a question. Could I be even smaller? That would be kind of helpful. Okay, this might work. So this is on the CBC, and it's from 2021. It says 7 Indigenous-themed podcasts to enlighten you. This the best-selling graphic novel anthology that tells 150 years of Canadian history through Indigenous stories, is now available as a podcast by CBC. The 10-episode series will be hosted by Roseanne Deerchild and will air on CBC Radio 1. This place features Indigenous creators, including David A. Robertson, Richard Van Camp, Katharina Vermette, and Brandon Mitchell, and incorporates elements of fantasy and magical realism to examine the 150 plus years of Canadian history since Confederation from an Indigenous perspective. There's also Twisted Stories, which I've listened to here and there. I need to get back into it. Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze. I'm trying not to sneeze. Savage Reserve, Indian Time. Words connect us, but have the power to hurt us deeply. Telling Our Twisted Histories is an 11-episode podcast series that reclaims Indigenous history by exploring 11 words whose meanings have been twisted by centuries of colonization. So I don't want to read the whole thing, but The Secret Life of Canada. The Secret Life of Canada is a podcast about the untold and undertold history of Canada. This spirited and sometimes irreverent show highlights the people, places, and stories that probably didn't make it into your high school textbooks. There's also Muddied Water. Who are the Métis? It's complicated. This podcast explores the history of Métis people in Manitoba, beginning with Louis Riel, who was hero to some and traitor to others. Host Stephanie Cram unveils the intricate history of the Métis and follows the thread from resistance to Renaissance. Kiwu, an intriguing 5-part podcast in which Governor General award-winning author David A. Robertson dives into his family's history and mysteries as he discovers and connects with his Cree identity. Pieces, a podcast about a young man's journey to understand his Indigenous identity. Since the day he was old enough, Jeremy knew he was different. A mix of woodland Cree and white European heritage, he has experienced life through both vantage points as well as the stereotypes. Join 19-year-old Jeremy Ratt on a journey of self-discovery as he seeks to understand his roots and all of the distinct pieces that form who he is today. Inuit, I don't know if I'm going to say that right. Inuit Unikangit, host and archivist Mary Powder reunites Inuit with stories from CBC's North Vast. I don't want to say this wrong. Vast Inuktitut language archives by replaying them for the descendants of the original storytellers, some of whom are hearing them for the very first time. Oh, that sounds incredible. That was the last one. Wow. I love the CBC. They always have plenty of content like that. All right, everyone. I hope you like those recommendations. If there's anything that you would like to add, if this is something that circulates, it would help if you would just comment in the chat just to make a contribution, and not to just let me know, but just other people know during this month and to carry on for the rest of the year, right? All year round, of just resources that people can participate in. If you're watching this, thank you so much for those who have subscribed recently. I really appreciate you. Just having a chance to engage with community has meant a lot to me. But if you haven't subscribed and you'd like this, please subscribe, and like I said, please comment below. I'm up for all suggestions and references. And I will shortly be putting out movie suggestions too. So this is just like the first in a series. So I love you all, and I'll see you in the chat.